Welcome. Your art is a spell, and it will change your life and the world around you. Welcome back to Your Art is a Spell. I'm so thrilled for today's special guest. We're going to be speaking with the artist known as Eva Aguila, who for me has been such a beacon of hope, of persistence, of resilience here in the city of Los Angeles. Eva is an artist who has really dedicated so much of her career supporting other artists and making space for artists to explore their own practices. We will get into that, and we will also get into some of Eva's newest work, the new art that she's showing next month in April. If you're listening to this in March, she will be having her first ever solo show at the Vincent Price Art Museum, and she shares a little bit about that. But before we get into the conversation, let me read you Eva's bio. Eva Aguila is a Mexican-American interdisciplinary artist and organizer. As a first-generation born in Los Angeles, her work currently is centered around oral histories of the Mexican diaspora, specifically her ancestral family's rural Michoacan communities. Aguila works with video, sound, and installation to examine personal histories and the in-betweenness of the Latina experience. Using research and personal archives, her current work is informed by the materiality of memory. Inspired by ephemerality and indigenous futurism, she works with time-based media to depict stories and alternative histories to reinterpret cultural portrayals of the diaspora. Aguila is also one of the founders and board president of Coaxial Arts Foundation, an artist-run nonprofit organization dedicated to experimental sound, video, and performance art. Aguila co-created Coaxial Arts Foundation as a way to further the community of interdisciplinary media arts in LA, as well as foster the community itself. Her passion for grassroots organizing started as a need to support underrepresented artist communities, as ephemeral art is not always represented in traditional art galleries. Aguila holds a BFA from California Institute of the Arts from the School of Theater and Design in Stage Management, and most recently graduated from the University of California with an MFA in Art from the Roski School of Art and Design. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Eva Aguila. Hi, Eva. Welcome so much
Hello.
to Your Art is a Spell. I'm so glad that you're here and so excited to connect with you. And yeah, would love for you to share a little bit about who you are, to introduce yourself to folks.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Eva Aguila. I'm an artist. I'm also an organizer and an avid gardener and a lot of things. I'm interdisciplinary and yeah, just happy to be here and talk to you today.
Yeah, and you and I go way back. We've known each other for quite some time, and we've
Yeah.
definitely connected in a lot of different ways. And so I thought we could maybe talk a little bit about some of the ways that we've intersected, but I would love just to hear from you in your own words, like how you describe your career or your art journey. What's your connection to art, and how has art been? What kind of a role has it had in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my journey as an artist started since oddly since I was a kid, but I just didn't realize that I was an artist until later in life. Like I think a big significant pivotal point for me was in the sixth grade when I had an elementary school teacher named Mrs. Robinson who loved painting and she encouraged us to paint, her students. And she took five of us to one of her like ladies of luncheon with with our paintings and paid for the framing and everything to
Oh,
sell
so
our
cool.
paintings to these ladies. And that was the first time that I realized that art is like a career where like people can, well, maybe not a career, but I was like, wow, people buy this. It's not just something we do for fun. I kept painting, but then when I was in high school, I just moved into theater, video, performance art, even like just like into different types of um, forms. And that led me to go to Cal Arts for undergrad. I was there for theater production. I studied stage management, which is the opposite of being creative. But I think at the time I felt that I needed to learn something practical because being like a daughter of immigrants and like first generation for a lot of things. Like my parents didn't even go to high school or even elementary school. So me going to college was a big deal. And I
Yeah.
felt like I needed to learn something practical because I needed to get a job. And so that was like my way to like still be involved in the creative industry while still learning something practical. But it pretty much took me like almost 20 years to realize that my entire life I've been making decisions based upon what I thought other people needed me to do. And it's
Mm.
only up until recently that I actually started to finally do the things that I want to do because I need to do them for myself. And that's what
Yeah.
led me to go to grad school and get that fine art degree that I think I was withholding from myself for many years, almost 2 decades.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a journey, but I'm finally doing what I need to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm curious, like, was there like a moment where you had that like realization of like, I've been really making a lot of my decisions based off of other people's, you know, interests or projections. And yeah, what was that moment, if you can remember that?
Oof. I mean, it took several years of therapy and healing to go there, but I think it was like a few years after I had opened Coaxial Arts Foundation, which is the nonprofit that I run. And I was like working full time at a museum to pay for this nonprofit. And I just was
Um,
working like 7 days a week. And I was so stressed. And I started going to therapy just to deal with my stress. And through the process of unpacking why I had started Coaxial, why I was working this full time job, all this stuff. Like I started to realize that I was doing all this stuff for other people and not for myself. And so then I had to like continue therapy to actually leave that full time museum job, which was very difficult to leave that stability in order
yeah.
to then shift gears and do the things that really were important to me, which is to be an artist and be creative. And so it's
Wow.
that journey started, I think, in like 2017. Yeah. And so, yeah. And we're in 2025. So, yeah, that's how long it's taken me.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible to hear that, you know, it was through a therapeutic process of like kind of learning more about yourself that you started to make these changes and totally makes sense that it takes some time sometimes to like really make these big decisions. And you brought up coaxial, and that's definitely something I would love for us to talk a little bit about. Do you mind just sharing about coaxial, like maybe just a little bit about the history um I think also maybe something that could be interesting is like how that has like also maybe informed your own artistic practice or your own artistic journey.
Yeah. I think, we started in 2015 and that I decided to start it right after like a series of experiences that I had with the art world that I felt were disappointing or lacking or kind of just doing things in a way that were different from the reason why I love art. And so I kind of took it into my own hands and felt the need to create a space in the way that I thought needed to exist. I guess in a way I wanted to fill in that gap of the need that I saw in LA. And I wanted some sort of like hub or something for artists at the intersection of video, sound, and performance art. Because I think a lot of times those worlds are compartmentalized, or sometimes they're labeled in like these other realms that are not seen as visual arts or in the visual art world, but they are. And so I just kind of wanted to hone in more on that nebulous section that I think all of us kind of struggle with of like, well, is this art? Is sound art, visual art, is it video art? I don't know. And same with
Yeah.
performance art. So I had this issues. And so, and I wanted people to just have the time and space to create because I myself had that need. Like space in LA, as you know, is very difficult because of the cost of rent, and not everyone can afford a studio and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
performance can be really weird. Music venues weren't really quite, the place for the kind of work that we exhibit at Coaxial. And same goes for like white wall galleries. And so I don't know. So it was just a response to wanting to fill in that gap. And yeah, we've been doing it for 10 years. We're about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Like that's so exciting for y'all to be around for 10 years, especially as like an underground, alternative type space. Like that's like 1,000 years, in that world. Like, and yeah, I'm curious about that journey because I know like y'all started like kind of more like DIY underground, right? And had shifted a little bit, right? And I'm curious about that journey, like what that's been like for you all.
Oh my God. It's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Because I just honestly I was kind of naive about what it would be like to start a nonprofit. I just kind of took it into like my own hands and did it in this very DIY style where I literally bought a book and went through the instructions on how to start a nonprofit
Wow.
and just went through the steps because we couldn't afford a lawyer. We couldn't even afford rent at the time. I actually made the sacrifice of selling all of my video gear to pay for 2 months of rent while I figure
Wow.
out how I'm going to pay the rest of the rent because now it's suddenly I had this lease aside from where I live. And I was like, wow, okay, well, how am I going to pay for this? Because you can't immediately get grants. Like that process usually takes a while. And usually funders don't like to give you money until you've been programming for at least 2 to 3 years. And so I was trying to figure out a way of how am I going to survive for the next 3 years until we can actually start getting funding from these sources like the municipal grants, the private foundations, donation, whatever.
Hmm.
And my solution was to essentially sacrifice me being an artist and selling all my gear and getting a full-time museum job and paying for that. And that's what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, in a way, like you supported so many people by doing that, right? Like you were really creating, as you said, a much needed space that didn't really exist in Los Angeles. And I know how many artists, myself included, have really benefited from the space that you've helped to create. And yeah, I'm like curious about, as you were working in Coaxial and, really providing space, but also, as you said, sacrificing like, what have you learned, about like the DIY to maybe more institutional or funded world? Because I know that that's like can feel like such an insurmountable barrier for a lot of people. And as you said, you like didn't have money to hire someone. You did a lot of this work on your own. Like that to me makes you such a special, unique person that you're willing to do that kind of work and you have that capacity. So, yeah, I'm just curious, like, what have you learned or what could you share to people who might want to do that or who like are like, how do you even do that?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my mom always told me that I was very stubborn. So like I think it's just being persistent because it's not hard. Like, we exist in this very like capitalist mindset. And whether we think about it or not, even within this type of nonprofit world, it's still within those parameters of this capitalist model because
Yeah,
well, the things that a lot of people don't talk about, which I didn't know, I naively just didn't think about and learned, throughout this process of starting this nonprofit is that a lot of nonprofits are ran by wealthy people who already have the connections to that funding source where they can just call up someone and get like $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 or whatever. Like they
wow,
could have these like galas where they can charge $150 a ticket. Unfortunately, we don't have those resources. I don't have those connections because a lot of those connections are usually family connections or just lineage or just legacy connections that
right.
maybe you grew up around. And I didn't have those because literally my parents are from a small, they're both from Michoacan, small rural towns of Michoacan where like they don't have any money. And like, so like our connections are just like other family members who are just as poor as us, and also
Right.
like, why would they donate? I mean, it just, they don't even understand this. I didn't even tell my parents I started Coaxial because they wouldn't have even understood what that really means for me or why I
Mm,
was doing this. And so
right.
I kind of hid it from them. I still actually haven't really told them that I started it technically. I think they sort of figured it out at this point,
Oh my gosh.
but like I never told them because I feel like they would get mad at me because they're like, wait, why are you
Mm,
doing this? But it
right.
was really important to me to do it. I just had this need, this pull, something was pushing me, this pull, impulse, I guess,
Yeah.
to do it. And I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And so anyone putting any doubt, I think would have put self-doubt into me, and then I would have then been scared or whatever and then not maybe done it. And so I've just been learning along the process, but it has been like a difficult journey because one thing that I've experienced that I feel like I'm still recovering from is the burnout. And also I've witnessed other people that have helped me run Coaxial also go through this burnout. And it's
Yeah.
really sad because I think we all really care about this and we all want it to keep existing, but it's not worth it at the expense of the individual where like I
Right.
physically got sick. Like in like 2018, I think a big wake up call for me was in 2018. I got shingles from all the stress
Wow.
from running a
Yeah.
nonprofit and working full time. And
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, like I'm in my 30s. Like I shouldn't be getting shingles. That's something that old people get, you know? But I think I was just under so much stress that
Yeah.
I wasn't taking care of myself. And that's not ever good for anybody, you know? And then I started to become like resentful and then bitter, and then it just was awful. And so I think I've just been in this healing realm of like, how do I keep going where I really care about, you know, helping people, helping artists, helping my community, but not at the expense of me being a martyr, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's what it honestly felt like. It's been a
I'm
journey.
so glad you shared that because I think that is such an important thing to name that as much as you might have the passion and the persistence and also having friends and people to support you, it is still a lot of work, right? It is still so much work to run an entire organization while still also having a job or having to do your own art practice on the side, right? Like there's so much work that's involved, and burnout is such a big thing that impacts so many people. And yeah, I'm, so glad that there was a moment that you decided to go to therapy and started to really think about what feels important for you in terms of your own art career. And I would love for us to pivot a little bit more to talk about your art career, especially now that you've had a few years and you've gone through a whole MFA program at USC. Like, I just would love for you to share a little bit about what that's been like for you to be able to like pivot and have more of your life be in your art and your art practice.
Yeah. I mean, my art practice has also been a journey, and I think that there's always a lot of divine timing that's been happening throughout my life where like I do something and then that leads me to something, and I do something and that leads me to something, and then it's just kind of been like that in my since my whole adulthood. And I'm always like in awe of this because I'm like, wow, like how does this happen? Like that this happens and then this happens. Like sometimes it just feels like a big coincidence, but then I'm like, no, it's not. Like the ancestors are with me and they've been with me the whole time, whether I knew it or not. But I
Mm,
feel like I haven't been on this journey by myself, even though for most of my life, I think I felt very lonely, but I actually have had a lot of support from the bigger realm, I guess. And
yeah,
it wasn't until I started doing like more spiritual work that it like helped me to hone in on the things that I really cared about in terms of like my art practice and stuff. And so that journey started when I was working at the Natural History Museum, and I helped develop a lot of the content that is in exhibitions to this day. Like there's things that are permanently in the shows that I made. And one of those is this looping video where I interviewed 9 indigenous people from the LA Basin area. And
mhm,
I spent, you know, at least 9 hours, if not more, hearing about their story of their indigeneity. And I think that brought me to do a lot of self reflection and thinking about my own heritage, which I had never done before. But yeah, around that time, I was working on many projects, but that was one of them. I also
mhm.
met Barbara Carrasco because we were installing the really big mural that's about LA history. And I helped do the lighting grid for that because it was a challenge to light it evenly. And so I was in charge of essentially the lighting design and the lighting everything. And then just, I don't know, it was just, I was meeting like all these like Chicano elders, but then also indigeneity and all this stuff. And then
Yeah.
it just brought me to want to do my own project. And at that point, I had already went part-time at the museum and was doing freelance work. And I was up in Silicon Valley doing a job for a big tech company. And I was just kind of like, thinking like, what am I doing with my life? What is my purpose or why? And then I opened
Mm,
my email and there was this open call for DCA to do the current LA food project. And I had already started thinking about, like, I had this project in mind where I wanted to talk to my dad about tortillas because we had just a year prior, we had gone to Europe together. And he kind of went through like this existential crisis where he couldn't find corn tortillas in Europe. And he naively thought that he can just go to the grocery store in Europe. And I'm not joking, in Italy and go buy corn tortillas. And I was like, no, dad, like, no, there's no corn tortillas here. Like, this is Europe. Like, they don't eat corn tortillas, And he
yeah.
settled for like, we found these like wraps. But at that point, that's when and he was having like such a hard time with that because he literally eats corn tortillas every single day with every meal. And
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, like, this isn't just about food. It's about identity and who you are as a
Mm-hmm.
person. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that really like stayed with me. And then when this open call happened, I was like, this is like divine timing. I'm like, I need to apply to this.
Yeah.
And I did, and I got it. And it was like what basically started on me making my own projects and led me to where I am today. Like why I went to grad school because I wanted more
Wow.
time to work on that kind of work. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Oh, that's so
yeah.
incredible. Yeah, and I'm curious, like, do you feel like that moment that you're saying that divine timing when that email arrived, right when you were having that like existential moment yourself too, do you feel like that was like your ancestors or like that like divine guidance that you're talking about that was like, hey, here's like an opening.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't believe in coincidences now because since then, like, there's been things like that all the time in my life.
Yeah.
How, like, one thing leads me to another, and then it's almost like a clue, like a scavenger hunt or something, where, like, there's this map and I'm supposed to go find it, but I can't get to the end until I get to this other thing first, Like, I feel like
Mm,
I've been on this journey, and that's one thing that I talked to, my friend Sanaz, who's a clairvoyant healer. She's
mhm.
helped me a lot connecting with my ancestors. And she says that when you're in alignment, that's just how it is. Like the path is cleared for you and everything that you need to be doing happens because it needs to happen for a reason. And it's not a coincidence. It's because you're in alignment with your true self.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so I just need to follow that and remember not to operate in fear, because I
Mm,
think that for many years I was operating in fear and making a lot of my decisions based on fear. And I need to be mindful of that. And that's something that I feel like I'm always, struggling with, or not struggling, but something that I have to like keep tabs on, because we still need to live, we still need to exist in this world. And so I need to always like ask myself, like, okay, is this thing like a practical thing because we need to do it
mm.
because it's actually like valid and like it's a safety thing? Or am I just doing this? Or am I wanting to do this because I'm afraid? Yeah. So just making those decisions, like, yeah, is always just a daily practice, I guess. I don't know.
It's such a great question to ask yourself and to be aware
Yeah.
of, and to, especially as you said, if it's like a kind of like a way that you like normally have shown up to kind of be like, okay, I know that that might happen, so let me be aware of this and ask that question. And yeah, with this said, like I'm curious like about that time in between you doing this project for Current LA and then going to graduate school. I'm curious like what made you decide to go to graduate school and also what was that process like? Especially, you know, I'm similar to you where like my parents, I had to hide my art passion from my parents. And so I like totally know that reality. um, But yeah, I'm like curious about that, like kind of what led you to go to grad school, what made you make that decision, and also what was that process like?
Well, it's funny you say that because I feel like that was also kind of not really decided. I almost didn't really decide. It was almost decided for me in a way. So me and Brock, my partner, brought us to New York during 2021 because we had lost all of our work because we do a lot of event production type stuff. And so, of course, because of COVID and the lockdown, there was literally no events. And so we literally didn't have any money, and we started to look outside of LA to keep existing, pay our bills and stuff. And we landed in New York. And it was because Brock had received a job there, but I didn't have a job, and so I was just thinking like, well, what should I do with my time? I'm like, maybe I should use this as a time for me to learn a new skill or reflect on like my career. Maybe event production isn't a sustainable future. I don't know. I was just going through a transitional period too. And so I
Uh,
applied to Hunter College in New York, and I got accepted, and I was going to sign up for classes and everything. But the week that I was supposed to sign up for classes, Brock got a new job offer back in LA. And I kind of saw that as a sign that I was like, okay, we can't stay in New York. Like, we need to move back to LA. There's something calling us to move back. Another sign that I'm getting, like,
totally.
because otherwise
Yeah.
we would have gone stuck there for 3 years, because that was a 3-year
Wow.
program. And so we're like, nope, okay, we're moving back to LA. Because also I wasn't happy in New York. Like, I was going through existential crisis of identity. Like, who am I? Like, what am I doing here as a because I feel like a lot of my work is rooted in LA or Mexico. And I just
Yeah.
felt so disconnected from all of that being so far away. And also, yeah, my families and friends are all here. And so we come back to LA, and somehow the director of the USC program found out that I had applied to grad school, and
Wow.
she invited me to go on a tour. And I wasn't even planning on going to USC, to be honest, because I went to Cal Arts, which is another expensive private school. And so in my heart, I wanted to go to a state school or something,
Mhm.
and that's why I
Uh-huh.
chose Hunter, because I don't know, I still have student loans from Cal Arts, so I wasn't about to give myself more student loans for grad school.
Totally.
But I was very frank, and I told her all this. And so I was like, I would only do it if I get funding. And she was able to help me maneuver all of that. And that's how I ended up going, to be honest. And I'm happy to say I didn't take out a single student loan.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so glad that you were able to do that. And also like
Yeah.
how incredible that like someone in your community that was like the director was like, "Hey, come here. Like I want to
Yeah.
bring you in here." And
Yeah.
what was it like to go to grad school? I'm curious what that whole process was like for you.
I was like the oldest student in my cohort, so I definitely felt weird a lot of the time because most of them were in their 20s. And I was going to school in my literally in my when I was like 40. And so I'm like, there was a definite divide, or I felt it, but I was like, no, I can't be an ageist, and I can't let that stop me. I'm here to learn just like
Yeah.
everyone else. And even though I have this life experience, and I started a nonprofit, and I had this whole life career thing before, doesn't mean that I can't learn, but I also kind
Hmm.
of hit the ground running. I already had projects in mind. I already knew what I wanted to focus on. And I think that when you're younger, you maybe necessarily don't have some of that stuff figured out. And so I think that it was just different for me, I think, because I already knew what I wanted from the program. I just needed the time and space. And I think that for me, it was really great. I mean, I'd have to say that all grad programs have their issues. There's no program
Totally.
that is perfect, So you have to
Yeah.
really do your due diligence, do your research, and figure out what do you need from this program, and you really ask yourself, why are you going? And so I think that sometimes people just go just because they don't know, or I don't know, they just, or maybe don't
Uh-huh.
think about it. Um,
Or a lot of
but
people are told like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like,
exactly, yeah. And I had already, I thought about it a lot. I had witnessed a lot of my friends go through the program, and I had heard the pros and cons. I had people that were telling me not to go, that it would be a waste of time. I mean, but I needed to remove like all of that noise and just think about the reason why I needed to go,
Yeah.
and just like really like hone in on those, because anything, if I listened to all of those, like it would have just made me insecure, and I think would have brought a lot of self-doubt and stuff, to the point where I didn't even tell my parents I was going until a couple of weeks before I started school. I'm not even joking, because I knew they were going to react poorly to it, and they did. They kind of scolded me a little. They still, like, even though I'm like a 40-year-old woman, or not 41, about to turn 42, they still kind of do that sometimes. And so, I've had issues with boundaries with them and stuff, but sometimes it still happens. And
Uh-huh.
they also live in a very patriarchal society. I mean, where male and female have these particular roles. And after I left the room, they like talked to Brock separately and were like, "Do you agree with this?" And then, of course, he vouched for me, but he told me later
Right.
after they left what they had said, and that just kind of pissed me off because it's just because they don't believe me. Like they think they have to go ask my husband if he agrees with this because he's still like my owner or something. I don't know. It's like, but
Yeah.
that's how they think, and I can't change that
Uh-huh.
about them. But I mean, these are just like some of the struggles that I feel like I deal with being femme, from these rural parts of Mexico.
Yeah.
But even more of a reason to do it because it's an act of resistance for me, and education is really important. And so even just some of the friends that were telling me not to go, like, I'm just like, you don't get it. You don't understand what it's like to be me. So sorry, I'm going to go and I'm going to
Yeah.
do the best that I can. And I did. And I'm happy to say that I've had a lot of success. I was very happy with my thesis show, and now I'm working on a solo show that's about to open in like a few weeks. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I definitely want to get into your solo show because I'm so excited about it. But before that, I do have a question about, getting your MFA. Like, do you mind sharing, like, what are some like tangible things that you feel like you got from your MFA program? Just in case if there's someone listening who like is considering going, like, what are some tangible things that you feel like you got from it?
For me, it was the studio time, like literally being in the studio and honing in on the things that I cared about, but then
Mm,
also learning how to talk about it and research. And not every program is like that. Every program is different. And the reason why I feel like I needed to be at USC is because they are very academic. I had to write a thesis paper along with doing a solo exhibition, which could be
wow.
a lot
Yeah,
for people. Um,
definitely.
and so I wrote a 40-page thesis paper, not like a traditional research paper per se, but that's as part of my MFA program. I needed to do that. And I had a committee that needed to read it and approve it and give me notes and all this stuff. And that was very challenging for me, but I needed to be challenged in that way because um, having a voice has always been something that I've struggled with. Yeah, like I said, like I wasn't given a voice as a kid because of being a femme or whatever. Like women just don't have voices. I don't know how to, they just don't. And so it's something that I've always struggled with. And so this was like my time and space to find my voice, but also receive feedback. I think that was really important, and
Yeah.
so I feel really lucky that I had the committee that I had, and just the people that came in through my studio, and I was able to share my work. Shireen Gunas is one of them. Like, she was on my committee and I love her and I miss her and I still wish I had studio visits with her. And then Mary Kelly also, she's like a brilliant woman and I love her too. And she was also on my committee, and, so many people. And like Jennifer West, who brought me to the program, even though I think I'm making very different work than her art practice. Like, I think she really helped me hone in on the things that I really care about.
Yeah.
I took a directed research class with her last summer, even though I was technically graduated, to start the research project for the exhibition that I'm about to open. And so
Mm,
I feel like I just got a lot of support because I also knew what I wanted. And so that really helped
yeah.
me hone in on the things I needed. So if I needed something, I would ask for it. And so I was always very direct and kind of fighting for myself and also my
Yeah.
cohort, you know. Um,
Yeah, you leaning into your
yeah.
voice, right? Using your voice. Like I'm so glad
Yeah.
that it was a space for you to really like practice that and also to explore that. And yeah, and I'd love for you to share about your solo show. I'm so proud of you, so excited, cannot wait to see your exhibition, and would love to hear about if you want to give the information out, and also if you want to share a little bit about what it's about. And I know that you were just in Mexico, right? So like if you wanted to share a little bit about what this project entails.
Yeah. I mean, that's also, this project is also kind of like an extension of another project that I worked on. So a year and a half ago, I
Uh-huh.
was in the Sur Biennial and I did an installation about labor and agricultural labor. And it was about the braceros and how both my grandparents were braceros and several of my family members. And I originally conceived or thought about this project for the Mexicali Biennial, but unfortunately they didn't accept the project proposal. And so I kind of like set that project aside. But then I got invited to do the Sur Biennial, and based on the curator's theme, I thought it would be very appropriate to finish that project that I had started a year prior. And I don't know. I also think it was divine timing because I think had I done it at the Mexicali Biennial, it wouldn't have been what it ended up being, and it wouldn't have led me to where I am now. So it
Mm,
was why it
totally.
needed to have, yeah, it needed to happen, like
Yeah.
because like one thing that was missing that would have been missing from the first iteration was that my uncle gave me a lot of his archives and research about him doing work with Cesar Chavez and the grape boycott movement. Cesar did a lot of work around that, and I actually have a copy of his last speech before he passed away that my uncle recorded because my uncle Jorge is also an organizer and educator, and he was teaching at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo at the time, and he would
Hmm.
organize Civil Rights Week where he would invite organizers and artists and guest speakers to talk about civil rights and things like that. And so on one of those occasions, it was Cesar Chavez talking about all the pesticides and the labor mistreatment of workers in the grape agricultural business in Northern California. And with that included wine grapes, not just table grapes. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about because they just don't. Like wine companies don't want you to think about
Right.
these things, you know?
Right.
And the sad thing about my uncle doing this work is that it actually ended his marriage because his wife was really involved or had a lot of friends in the wine growing business. And she didn't like that my uncle was bringing awareness to this kind of work and felt embarrassed by it or something. Like, I don't know, terrible, terrible thing. But it just, I think that is what planted the seed for me to start thinking about the project. And then I was just kind of thinking about that. And then a few months later, I was watching this PBS show, Lost LA. And one of the episodes was about the wine history in California and how it was started in LA. And I was like, wow, like that's interesting. I didn't know, but I still didn't have that connection. Like what really sold me on why I needed to do this project was when I was going to go to Europe this summer. I really wanted to go to the Coachiron region. And I found out that the Coachiron region was started by the Catholic Church through the Pope. And at that point, I was like, wow, okay, wine and mistreating of labor all through the Catholic Church. And so I don't know, I just started like obsessively researching, and I don't even know what I was looking for until I knew what I was looking for, which is this 500-year document that Hernan Cortez wrote in 1524. And it's a decree. It was like a law uh, made in Nova España that's about planting grapes for the Spanish government so they can make wine for the sacrament.
Wow.
And when I found that, I was like, this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I decided at that point, I'm like, I'm making my project about this. And so it was, yeah, divine timing. But
Yeah.
so my project is about the 500-year history of colonization through the lens of wine production.
Wow.
And yeah, I've just been diving deeper into that because there's just so much history in LA in particular, but also in Mexico, and these connections are all related. And I think sometimes these histories are a little disjointed, and so I'm making an effort to try to connect them all. Spain, the Spanish government, Catholic Church, with Nueva España, with California, because people
Yeah.
don't think about it, but before California was the US or Mexico even, it was Nueva España.
Yeah.
Like the missions were started by the missionaries when it was Nueva España. And like, yeah. And so I just really wanted to talk about that history because the oldest grapevine in Northern California is in the San Gabriel Mission. And a lot of
Mm.
people don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's just like there's a lot to unpack there, but I wanted to take the history further, and so I went to Mexico to do research there. Found these like old Jesuit caves where they
Wow.
like subjugated the native people and cultivated wine, not just wine, but everything. They
Hmm.
needed the missions needed to be self-sustaining, and so they were growing all kinds of crops, but like vine vines for grapes were in particular important, and it was laid out in this decree that Hernan Cortez wrote. So yeah.
Wow, it's so incredible that you're using your art practice as like a way to build these connections, especially for these histories that, as you said, are not ideal. They're not really, you know, advertised. A lot of them are hidden or even like pushed away in like a dark corner, right? And yeah, I'd love for you to share like details because I would love for folks to be able to come and see your exhibition. Do you mind letting us know like when it's going to open? And also, I'm very curious, like what medium or mediums might be included.
Yeah, yeah. So I like wanted to hit it from every direction, and so the San Gabriel Mission was very gracious and let me pick grapes from their vines, and I made grape ink from
Wow.
it. And I made these like kind of, I don't even know what to call them. Actually, I have some in my background, but I took text from Cortez's book, Decree, and literally took passages from that explaining the subjugation of the native people. And then I have different like religious imagery from it. And I made 3 panels like that. But
Mm,
I didn't want to just talk about the subjugation. I also wanted to talk about what's lacking or what's missing because of erasure. And so I made 3 Purepecha wall pieces to counteract the subjugation. And so that
yeah.
one is more about like there's more indigenous imagery. And then I wrote a poem and then translated it to Purepecha. And I don't speak Purepecha just to be transparent, but I have this dictionary that translates. So I was able to do it through that. And then my main background is in video and sound, and so I recorded literally the earth, the vibrations of the earth, and the
Mm,
vibrations of the grapevines, and also vibrations of the mission buildings,
yeah.
and making a soundscape with these vibrations while you're watching the imagery of the land. I also had the need to make more things with my hands, so I made ceramic sculptures that simulate the Gobelier vining, which is like the style of vining that the Spanish did 500 years ago. I mean, they don't really
Mm,
look like vines to me. Some people say like they look like heartbeats or heart valves or something, but which is funny because the exhibition is called Vino de Sangre.
wow.
So it just felt very appropriate that that's what people think it is. But I
Yeah.
just like some of my ceramic friends, like or ceramicists, they tell me that clay has memory. And so I was like really thinking about that. And so when I was building it, I was like, clay has memory, clay has memory. And since I've been like literally thinking about the memory of from 500 years ago. I kind of wanted to put that energy into the sculptures. And so that's going to
Mm,
be part of it.
wow.
Yeah. And it opens
Ah.
April 26th. Hopefully it should be announced soon. Yeah, they're working on the press release as we speak. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be at the Vincent Price Art Museum, correct?
Yes, the Vincent Price Art Museum. Yes. And it's my first solo exhibition.
Eh.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's there right, down the street from the San Gabriel Mission.
Yeah. uh,
Like these things don't happen by accident. It needed to happen there,
yeah.
because I think that we need to reconcile with this past.
Yeah. Yeah, and your art practice and your own being is such a perfect conduit to really work with these histories and to create some magic out of these histories and really transmute and transform. I'm really hearing that in what you're creating. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much, Eva, for being on this podcast and for sharing about your journey and about your art practice. It's such a gift to connect with you and to be able to share your work with everyone. And I'm just, as a way to close, I would love for you to share how folks can see more of your art, how they can stay connected with you.
Yeah, I have my website, which I try to update when I have new content or whatever. I mean, not content, but just, when I get more like installation photos and stuff. But also just connecting in person, to be honest. Like the exhibition is going to be open until mid-September. So I just hope that as many people can come through and see it between April 26th and September, I think 14th or 15th, I forget. But
Wonderful.
and then we're gonna have programming. I really just want to be in conversation with people because I think these stories are really important to talk about. And right now, I'm just trying to work on getting some programming where like we have like talks and stuff. Yeah, so yeah, just come and say hi. But if you can't, you can always reach me on social media. Of course, Instagram, that kind
Yeah,
of
and
thing.
I'll make sure to put your links in the show notes, and also this is going to be on YouTube too, so I will definitely be sharing those links there too. And just want to thank you for being on Your Art is a Spell, and just so grateful to you for everything you do for our communities, and so excited for you to really be stepping into your own art practice and sharing it with all of us. So thank you, Eva, so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
More conversations.
Yeah. I feel so moved by that conversation that we just had with Eva. I feel like there's so many nuggets in there that I want to highlight. One of them being that it's so important for us to really find our voice and to get clarity around what our visions are, what our purpose is, and to remember that there are always guides, ancestors, beings out there wanting to connect with us and wanting to give us some guidance around what our next steps are. It's so important to be open, to be ready for those moments when those little doorways open or those little portals show up and we might get invited into the next step of our life. And I also want to highlight how Eva has been such a pillar of the underground performance and video sound art communities in Los Angeles, how much she has sacrificed her own career, her own time on this planet to make space for other people. And I think this is something that is so commendable and that I am just so in awe of because you can really hear from her how much she has worked to make sure that other artists have space to share their art. And it makes me so happy to know that she is being platformed, that she is having time to really work on her own practice and to share these really important histories that, as we talked about, are often obfuscated, negated, not talked about. It is so important that she's using her art practice to really bring forward these histories in a contemporary art setting. I am so excited for the opening. I'm definitely planning to be there together, and I hope you will be too. I hope we can see each other there. And in the meantime, I want to invite you to subscribe here to this channel on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast. Share this with a friend, with an artist friend who might need to hear these messages. And also leave us a review. I will be picking someone in the second to last episode of season 1 for a free 30-minute tarot reading with me. So continue to leave your wonderful comments. I'm so grateful for the folks who've already been leaving such lovely, lovely reviews of this podcast. And so until next time, do not forget that your art is a spell and it will change your life and the world around you. Bye.